origami, oregano, anagram, anamana. I've heard them all.
Good morning.
I'm from Columbia, South Carolina, and I'm here because I got the opportunity to do one of the things on my bucket list and join an Anagama kiln firing.
Well, the shape of the kiln goes back to about 900 AD, Japanese original kiln influenced by the Chinese, we're not sure. But it was dug into a hillside, into raw clay, and it is a bottle shape or a flame shape.
So you have starting a little bit smaller and rounded, going into a belly, and then going up to the top into a point, so that the fire will actually move through the entire kiln.
By going up the hill, we don't have to put quite the chimney on it, and we get strong draft, and we're able to get to the temperature.
I have now gone from being a full-time potter for 38 years to being a full-time wood splitter and a part-time potter. We get trees that have already been cut. The tree services have to pay to dump it, so I just get them to come bring it here. Now I have 15 to 20 potters that participate in these firings, and everybody comes and helps with the work. The difference between a kiln and a kiln is basically where you grew up.
It's kiln in my book, but I know people who want to call it kill.
The word is spelled K-I-L-N with an N. I grew up in South Florida, and it was always just kill.
Kiln.
We spend probably 2 days glazing and wadding and getting everything ready. What I'm doing here is using wadding that will raise the piece up off of the kill shelf. We're going up to temperatures where the wood ash itself will melt and form a glaze. So you have to raise everything up off of the shelf, or else it will be glazed down to it, and it'll break the piece and break the pot and the shelf.
Nobody can say I'm not dedicated.
How's this one? I think that's too tall.
We load the kiln from the back all the way forward, filling it in each layer so as to allow the flame to go through the entire kiln.
Every time you fire, it's going to be different, because how the pots are stacked in the kiln will determine how the flame weaves its way through.
More tall stuff, I'll take that.
You got it.
We have to be careful that we want to get the glazes that need a lot of heat in one area, and distributing that is an ongoing process that usually pretty experienced people are doing the loading that know the kiln, and the more we know about the kiln, the better we can place the pieces.
So those in front get a lot more ash. Those that are facing the front, that front surface will get ash, the back might not get as much. Depending on how the kiln is stacked, every time it's going to be a different firing. The cones look good. I can see both sets.
Ceramics depends upon time and temperature, and the cones melt at the same rate that the glaze melts. So we're not just going to a temperature, we're going to a temperature and holding that temperature. That allows the relationship between the ceramic ingredients to melt and form the glaze or glass-like coating. After finishing loading the kiln, we will actually build a small fire without starting it, and then we'll brick up the door so that when we're ready to, we can start it very easily, and we'll begin the firing.
There is a tradition saying when it rains, it enhances the glazes. The humidity carrying a lot of H2O in there, both the oxygen level and the hydrogen will supposedly enhance the glazes. What's the front and back looking like?
Well, front's holding at 1577. The back is getting better, and the reason why we keep a log of the temperatures is so everybody knows where we're at in the firing. There's a certain temperature that we want to reach at a given time. You don't want the kiln to run too hot, too fast, or obviously you don't want it to be too slow and low. And you like to have the back and the front about the same. Come on, hey guys, another stoke, front, 12 pieces at least. Mix them up in between.
So the kiln is monitored and stoked for the next 30 hours or so. And that's done with teams of at least 3, if not 4 people, who watch the temperature rise, stoke, move the wood, talk, chat, eat, and then stoke more. And we do that through the night. We have different shifts. Usually they're 4 to 8 hour shifts, depending on everybody's schedule. And that schedule is maintained constantly throughout the entire firing. You do not leave this kiln alone. You never leave it for more than 15 minutes without somebody paying attention.
Once the kiln gets up to temperature and you're working around the kiln, we require that you wear non-synthetic clothing. Polyester is a big no-no because it's plastic and it does melt. When it's at temperature, that piece of wood you throw in will start on fire before it leaves your hands.
At the height of this firing, there is a roar that starts in the kiln. When you open up the door to stoke, the oxygen flows in and ignition of unburned gases starts, and you start hearing the roar of the kiln. It's like the awakening of the dragon. I have listened to that for so many times, and I thought, that's the name of the kiln, Fire Song. The kiln is cooled for 5 days, and now it's Christmas morning.
The glazes went well.
Well, unloading a kiln is probably the most exciting part of the entire process. Maybe not as dramatic, but exciting for all the potters because there's been a transformation.
Before it was flat. Yeah. Now it's not flat anymore. It's got 30 colors running in there.
You know, there's results every time you fire. The results are always going to be different. And that's the serendipitous nature of this kiln. Yay! That's good.
The unique thing about any wood kiln, and particularly the Anagama, is the impact of the flame on the glaze and on the clay body. We really don't know what we're going to get, but we put it in the kiln with the idea that we'll get something maybe interesting or exciting.
And then you just wait, and you're always surprised, and most of the time it's even better than you thought.
Broken pot.
Sometimes it can be disastrous.
Well, we have half of a robot here. When he went in, he did have a head, but unfortunately the kiln had other options for him.
In either case, it's always worthwhile because there's a sense of discovery.
Good kill, everybody!
I think the thing that brings us back to the kiln is the camaraderie and the interaction, the exchange that happens between young students who are just starting out and people who have been doing it for 30 or 40 years. There's a lot of exchange. It's informal, but it's part of the enjoyment and part of the reason we do it.
We get to see the new work that everybody's been working on and get to catch up with each other. This is now sort of the clay clubhouse. It is creativity personified. It's happening in the kiln, and we're honored to be a part of that.
Fire Song!